Hi, today we'll be talking about a conversation analysis of non-progress and coping strategies with the bank task-oriented chatbot. First, let's talk about what is task-oriented chatbot. Task-oriented chatbot is one of the interfaces that can provide digital service for users. An example would be credit card recommendation, which is displayed on the right side figure. Instead of chatting, users have a specific goal when they use task-oriented chatbot. So it's important for them to have a successful conversation. However, sometimes their conversation with task-oriented chatbot can be unsuccessful. Chatbot may misunderstand users' meaning or not understand them at all. When this happens, users may try to cope with the problem by repeatedly emphasize or rephrase their purpose. However, users' coping strategies may not always work out, since chatbot may still make mistakes. So in these two cases that chatbot misunderstands or not understand the users, they can't make any progress towards their goals, and we call this non-progress. And when this problem is persistent, users either try to continue the conversation or just abandon the chatbot service and left unsatisfied. To prevent this negative experience, it's important for chatbot to guide users through difficulties and engage in smoother conversations. However, not often do researchers study obstacles in the day-to-day chatbot interaction. Most of the guidelines are based on studies in which participants were given interactive instructions or scenarios. We don't really know what kind of problems the users encounter and how they currently cope with these issues in their daily conversations with task-oriented chatbot. We have our research questions as following. The first one is, in users' daily use, what are the frequent obstacles that cause non-progress? And just to clarify, here by non-progress, we're referring to users who are not making any progress towards their goals. The second one is, how do users cope with these non-progresses? Are these strategies effective? By knowing these, we may have chance to understand what we can do to improve the system or help users overcome the non-progress. In particular, we're also interested in what kind of non-progress is more likely to lead to chatbot's abandonment. In another word, are there any clues for detecting abandonment? To answer our questions, we collaborated with a bank institution in Taiwan and conduct a conversation analysis on the task-oriented chatbot logs they provided. So this is our data set. The intent of the user for this bank chatbot was recognized by IBM Watson service for natural language understanding, and it used Facebook Messenger platform as one of its chatbot service channel. The original chat log includes 24K conversation exchanges, 2,500 users, and is from May to July in 2017. To analyze the data, we do the conversation analysis, and our process was inspired by several research studies. The coding process was done by two researchers, and they ensured a high intercoder reliability, which is 0.802 before they code separately. And our main coding themes include whether the conversation progressed further, subject of the conversation, trace of the user inputs, and users' coping strategies. For more details about the process and other themes, you can refer to our paper. Then, we delete the exchanges that their subject is not within the range of the bank service because they are not relevant to reaching task goals. The final data set includes 1,685 users and 17K exchanges. Now let's move on to our findings. For the first research question, what are the categories of frequent obstacles that cause non-progress? Not surprisingly, most of the non-progress were due to the inability of natural language understanding technique, such as local terms or wrong spelling. We call this type of content expected content, and we assume that they can be overcome if the NLU techniques gets improved. What we found more interestingly is that we uncovered some non-progresses that were caused by unexpected content, which we think will still be challenging to the current chatbot service. For this type of content, users use words that are common but can't be processed well by the current chatbot. So, we'll focus on the unexpected content later. We identify 5 kinds of unexpected content. I'll introduce them in descending order of frequency. The most frequent one is extra explanation. After one request, users add a supplementary sentence to make the request seem more specific. Second and third frequent one is separate one sentence into 2. Then, stay in previous topic. When chatbot go on to next question, users try to correct answers to the previous question. And the least frequent one is restart. Users may try to reset the chatbot task. So these results might imply that it's necessary to be able to process multiple messages and to improve flow control. Since users tend to give multiple inputs instead of one and may try to change their inputs later on. Now, to the next research question, strategies for coping with non-progress. Generally, there are 10 kinds of coping strategies and can categorized into 2 main kinds of coping strategies. The first is message reformulation, such as add or remove words into their original inputs. The second one is quitting. Here we divide it into quit surface or quit subject, and for each one, we further divided them into temporal and long-term leaving. We define temporal as more than 30 minutes according to literature, and long-term leaving or abandonment was defined as this use for more than 10 days, because most of users had their second use in 10 days in our datasets. Finally, based on this table, we know the most frequently used strategy is quitting. It comprised of 65% of the non-progress consequence. Then further investigate in relationship between non-progress types and coping strategies. In this heat map, each row represents a type of non-progress that users encounter in the conversation, and each column represents the coping strategy they adopted when they encountered that non-progress. When a coping strategy has a darker color, it has higher frequency of being adopted. For example, in row MP3 and column C7, we can see that in 44% of the time, this results in users leaving the topic temporarily. Let's highlight some patterns. First of all, quit subject temporarily was the most frequently used strategy when users encounter non-progress. Nevertheless, what we found interesting here is that certain coping strategies were used more often for dealing with certain non-progress than others. That is, the frequency of using specific strategies varied among different non-progress types. Take restart and stay in previous topic as example. When users try to reset or correct their answers to their previous question and cannot make progress, they tend to repeat their previous inputs to emphasize their true intention, and hardly will they use other message reformulation method. In contrast, users with unfinished message, they tend to add words or tell more detailed information. Based on these 2 examples, it seems that users understand which type of strategies are used to resolve some certain type of non-progresses. Since we were interested in service abandonment, let's focus on C10, which is long-term service abandonment. It's less than 40% in most scenarios. However, we observed that several non-progresses are more likely to lead to these coping strategies, which are chatbot unable to recognize users' extra explanation and are unable to recognize that users were finishing their unfinished sentences. In these 2 scenarios, we discovered that more than 50% of the time, users tend to abandon the chatbot service. The above example also points out a possibility that it's not just non-progress resource types of recognition error, that is, how chatbot responds to users is equally important. Although chatbot can't understand the user's meaning when users try to explain themselves or have unfinished sentence, users seem to be more willing to accept when chatbot misunderstands their meanings. Data has shown that the chances of users leaving the chatbot in this scenario is about half less. And aside from the clues we mentioned before, we also found other clues that is important for service abandonment. The first is, not many people will stay in the service after 3 consecutive non-progresses. The second one is, for users that abandon the service, before they left, They often repeatedly use same strategies instead of switching to different strategies. This may imply that when users are still adjusting, they haven't given up on solving the problem. In our paper, we provided 3 major implications. The first one is, a chatbot should process multiple messages, because in our observation, several unexpected contents were those users using multiple inputs to express their intents or try to add more details into their sentences in their daily texting. Second, we think chatbot should also grant users more flow control, because users will sometimes refer to the previous statement and may change their request at any time. It's better for a chatbot to always pay attention to the previous context to ensure users can make additions or correct their answers or requests. The third one is, we think it's okay for users to quit, but we can't avoid them from leaving with negative experiences. That includes several aspects. Number 1, we can pay attention to what kind of non-progress users encounter and customize the guidance provided by the chatbot service, because we know that even when the source of the non-progress is the same, different types of chatbot response lead to different chance of abandonment. And lastly, some users will talk to chatbot as they do with humans. Providing guidance for such users to access to other channels, like supporting website or human agent, may be a better choice to achieve users' goals. For more details, please refer to our paper. Thank you so much for listening.